Hello everyone, how is it hanging? And welcome back to our 9th episode of the Clone Army series. As per usual, today's episode is going to be chock full of excitement, glory, and most importantly, violence. Yeah, we're going to kill a lot of people, you know how it goes. But first, before any murder sprees can occur, we have a lot of weapons in our warehouse. Now, of course, we obtain these by killing plenty of Void, Federation soldiers, etc, but we do need to clear these out and also make a little bit of silver for more resources. So we've decided to try and sell all of them. Unfortunately though, we don't have any orbital traders at the moment. We're going to have to try and load them all up into our ships and fly them out to the Outlanders, who of course will purchase them. Now I'm not going to lie to you, it took an absolutely awful amount of time to get all these weapons loaded up because we just had so damn many of them, but we did finally get that done and immediately flew off to some nearby settlements to sell them. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe we ended up flying to 2 or 3 settlements, something around there. It was quite a few, just mostly because they didn't have enough silver to purchase all of them, and also we were looking for uranium and plasteel, which we ended up buying as much as they had. We also bought some steel to keep us from having to mine it or raid any mining operations or anything like that. We also bought fuel and some other things as well. And yes, I know I've said it 1,000 times, obviously the reason we need more and more and more resources is to help fuel our production of nuclear weapons, as well as just using them for defenses around the base like turrets. Look, what can I say? It's a never-ending cycle, okay? One of the more notable things that we actually ended up buying was a Persona core. Now this is going to be used for our large naval cannon turret thing. We had built one previously, so I decided that I'd buy one and build another. And yes, as you might imagine, it does require a Persona core as well as a smorgasbord of the other resources that luckily we ended up purchasing. We can only hope that it comes in handy when Void tries to spank our little clone asses again. Speaking of which, tensions appeared to be high between our clone soldiers. We had a few mental breaks here and there, and some of them were beginning social fights, unfortunately. But that's not really relevant to the story, I just kinda thought it might be interesting. Despite a few scuffles between our soldiers, things were honestly going really well. We were doing amazing, and I didn't think anything was really going to go wrong. Yes. Almost as if on cue. We have 6 of the largest possible Void Rage dropping in right on top of us. We love it. Napoleon and Wart called all of our soldiers out into the center of our base to engage the Void forces as they opened their pods. Thankfully, our anti-air guns had taken down some of the pods after they had fallen, and we began firing upon the enemies that were left. Now, you will notice that there is still power going on for our defenses, which is wonderful, but unfortunately, at some point during this battle, something happened and we ended up losing power and our defenses fell. Lucky for us though, before that could end up happening, we did take out the majority of the Void's mutants as well as their soldiers and whatnot as well. Now speaking of their soldiers, many of their undying soldiers continued coming back to life after we would stomp them out. Now of course this is an issue that we've been familiar with before, this happens all the time, but with how many raids we're getting at one time now, this is actually becoming quite the big issue, and we don't really have a good way of disposing with these bodies all at once. Our flamethrowers may burn them, but that will take a very long time. So we came up with a solution, the same solution we always use when it comes to Void: nuclear bombs. Turns out the best way to dispose of the corpses is with a big nuclear bomb right in the middle of the body pile. Void soldiers can't come back to life if there's nothing left. Now with our little resurrecting bodies issue over with, we kinda need to tackle the problem of why the hell our power ended up going out, even though our solar flare shield is still operational. My guess was down to 2 things. Most likely the power conduit that it was connected to ended up getting destroyed, and then it went out, and then there was no way to get it back online due to the solar flare. And also I was thinking maybe because there's several raids, maybe we need several magnetic shields to prevent the flare, so I ended up building a bunch more. But issues like this of course are expected when you're dealing with such a catastrophic force like Void. Now our defenses, even being online, can't really do too much more. We always depend on our army as our sole source of defense. Now don't get me wrong, the turrets are great in their own right. They're just not near as powerful as our soldiers. Now we have been losing quite a few in prior episodes, and I kind of blame myself for that, of course for multiple reasons, but one of the biggest reasons to me is we definitely need to make some upgrades in our armor and weapons. So I decided that we would begin doing so with our heavy clone class, mostly because it's going to take much less time than the majority of our forces, and also because they're just in a desperate need for an upgrade. Their numbers have dwindled significantly in the last few episodes. And so that we don't have to download any newer mods, I love newer mods, but I'd like to play around with some of the ones we currently have. I decided to go with the Purge Trooper armor for them. Now, of course, if you watched previous episodes, you're probably familiar with it, as it is the armor that Napoleon had before his current attire. Now, the Purge Trooper armor is slightly different than Napoleon's commander armor, but it is still extremely resilient, very flexible, and also extremely badass and intimidating. I can only imagine the fear in Void's eyes as these heavy class elite soldiers creep up on them in the dead of night. But you know, I thought that we were missing something here. Maybe we were missing a little touch from good old Wartward. So we decided that we would equip these soldiers with some plasma grenades. That is right, a little bit of Covenant technology along with our clone armor and weaponry. Besides, these grenades would be perfect for a heavy class. All they've been packing around so far are rifles and their vibro swords. Of course though, before we carry these grenades into battle, we'll need to test them out on a target. Aha! An innocent sleeping animal. Perfect. Our first volley of grenades onto the giant powerful beast ended up crippling it and it couldn't move anymore. Our second volley, however, would teleport the beast. Oh no, that's not teleporting. No, we vaporized it. Then, for whatever reason, I decided to make them throw their grenades at this little small hill. I don't know what I was expecting here, but it really didn't do much damage. I guess it's a good demonstration, though. Now that our heavy class was actually all geared up and ready, we would leave them behind to defend the base, and we would take our elite class as well as Napoleon and Wartwart to raid a local void fortress. Now, we didn't have many soldiers along with us, but we did take all 3 ships, and the reason for that is because the less soldiers and the more ships, the more room we have for resources to carry home. Now, as each of our ships ended up arriving at the base, we had another of those really strange loading glitches. I don't know if it has something to do with the fog at the base or what, but as our ships began to land, it despawned some of the walls and whatnot at the Void Fortress. I don't know. It was a little bit upsetting though, because obviously Void doesn't stand any chance against us, but I like to give them some false hope. Our soldiers ended up regrouping with Wartward and Napoleon after landing though, and we immediately all began bearing down upon the Void Fortress, destroying their turrets as well as their soldiers that came out to try and stop us. But you know what? You've seen this 1,000 times if you watched the previous episode, so instead of watching this, I'm going to show you a meme that I made. Isn't it funny? Would you look at that, just in the nick of time. The base has been destroyed. Technically, it was already destroyed with the loading glitch, but that's quite alright. We have all of these new resources. I gotta say, everyone was pretty darn tickled. We had some more Void Soldier blood on our hands, dead mutants that have been cleansed from the planet, and all the steel and all that we could ever hope for once again. We, of course, returned home, unloaded all of the beautiful resources from our ships, and began carrying all of it in. But, you know, I began thinking to myself, we just upgraded the heavy class, yet we didn't decide to use them on that raid for some reason, and we should really test them out this episode. But unfortunately, before we even had the chance to prepare for another raid, we had a rebirth chamber, and it was falling from the sky next to our base. It would appear that Void is becoming desperate. Not only are they trying to raid us more frequently with their own soldiers and whatnot, but they're also shooting these massive rebirth chambers near our base with Black Titans inside. Of course, though, we easily defeated the Black Titan. Oh, Void, is that all you have for me? Oh. Well, apparently not. We ended up having 8 of these massive rebirth chambers fall from the sky near our base, all containing these Black Titans. Some burst forth from their chambers trying to attack us preemptively, and others stayed inside and we attacked them first. As soon as the pods busted, we decided to shoot them down, of course. And though, of course, this was a very dangerous and tedious task, we did manage to kill all of the Black Titans that had fallen near our base. With this massive Void retaliation over with, though, it was finally time for us to retaliate against them once again. This time around, we would send our heavy class led by Commander Wartward. The base was nothing too special, more of the same of course, except this fortress appeared to have many more living Void soldiers within. Living Void soldiers? Oh, we'll fix that little problem. With several nuclear bombs dropped upon their filthy little heads, the base was pretty well emptied out. Of course though, we would still have the opportunity to test out our new heavy classes armor and weaponry. The first to feel the wrath of our holy hand grenades were the void turrets just outside the entrance of their base, and then we would move on to the turrets within. Truly what we're trying to get to is the nougaty center known as the mutants. Once we had finally moved in and found all the mutants, we cleansed them with blaster power as well as our holy hand grenades, of course, and then once we were finished with them, we went on to find their resources. In a previous episode, I said that the fortresses do not have any resources. They do, it's just a very small amount. I think in that episode, I had accidentally destroyed them with nuclear bombs. After returning home, Wart celebrated a successful mission with an ice-cold, blood-stained brewski, and just as well, so did our heavy-class troopers with some nice red wine. You know, we've really become a powerhouse on this planet, truly the powerhouse of the planet, as all the other factions are so much weaker and smaller, and just as well, Void is dwindling. As it stands on the entire planet, after all of these episodes of fighting them, trying to exterminate them, they only have 4 bases left. We are so extremely, incredibly close to our goal of eradicating Void. But that goal is still going to require a good bit more time as well as a shit ton of manpower. A special thanks once again to our patrons. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Our patrons on this channel make every video on the channel possible, as well as this one, of course. If you guys would like to support me on Patreon, there's a link, of course, in the video description as well as the channel bio. But thank you all ever so much for watching. I love all of you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.